Officer Clint Mercer blocks a sharply dressed black woman at a federal building's front doors. People like you don't belong past this point, he sneers. One word from me, and you'll vanish from the system. She stands still, expression unreadable, and reaches into her purse with measured calm. An ID card appears between steady fingers, extended across the counter as if it were a formality. Mercer snaps it from her hand, glances for half a second, then lets it fall to the floor with a smirk. Pick it up, he orders. She crouches, unhurried, then rises, gaze level. Mercer's lip curls. I don't care what kind of fake credentials you think will fly here. This is a restricted federal facility. He nods toward a small metal table beside the checkpoint. Empty the purse. Everything employees, mostly white, stream past untouched, their badges waved through with lazy familiarity. The woman methodically removes each item and aligns them with clinical precision, as if cataloging evidence for a future record. Mercer hovers, overplaying suspicion, eyes lingering longer than protocol allows. When she finishes and begins to repack, she looks up and asks evenly, Do you know who I am? Mercer barks a laugh that ricochets off the lobby's hard surfaces. Someone trying too hard to be someone, he jeers. He has no idea what thread he's pulling. Serena Holt steps through the revolving door at precisely 8:47 a.m., newly appointed director of the FBI, and in her mid-40s, business casual by deliberate choice, charcoal slacks, navy blouse, nothing flashy. Today is not about posture or rank. It's about seeing how the place really runs when leadership isn't on display. Mercer watches her, 20 minutes older in attitude than in years, eyes narrowing as she approaches the checkpoint with unhurried steps. This isn't Mercer's first time deciding who looks like they belong. He doesn't bother with eye contact. ID and reason for visit, he demands. His mind races through stereotypes. No escort, probably lost. Maybe maintenance staff using the wrong entrance. His personnel file, attractive to auditors, tells its own story. Several complaints for the excessive screening in 2022, dismissed without follow up, a grievance that vanished from the system the year after. A pattern. To Mercer's right, a white executive breezes by. Morning, Cliff, Mercer calls, barely glancing at the badge. How's the handicap? The man laughs and keeps walking. A white woman follows. No bag check, just a friendly buzz through. Have a good one, Ms. Roberts, Mercer chirps. He turns back to Serena, expression stiffening. Hey, Pierce, he calls to the adjacent station, voice pitched for her to hear. We've got another one trying to slip through. Probably facilities. Wrong door. Officer Noel Pierce looks up, discomfort flickering before his face resets. Mercer slides Serena's ID across the counter, then releases it just early enough to send it skittering to the floor. Their eyes meet, his daring, hers steady. As she bends to pick it up, he seals his fate. Serena rises with deliberate grace, ID pinched between two fingers. Every movement is considered a metronome of composure. Your name and badge number, please, she says, voice quiet, but accustomed to immediate compliance. Mercer covers his chest with his hand. Why? So you can file a complaint that disappears in a folder nobody reads? The fluorescent lights pick out sweat along his hairline despite the building's overzealous air conditioning. Pierce shifts, eyes darting from Serena to Mercer and back. The silence stretches, becoming its own witness. Serena doesn't fill it. She just watches, recording the scene, measuring angles and outcomes. I have an appointment, Serena states, a simple fact, no defensiveness. With who? Mercer asks, already reaching for the desk phone. He deliberately misspells her name while he calls upstairs, his performance telegraphing suspicion. No Serena Holt on today's schedule, he says after a cursory exchange. No appointment exists. Serena's jaw doesn't move. Check again, she suggests, tone even. Perhaps under Director Holt. Mercer's laugh is too loud, practiced. Listen, there's no appointment. You need to leave now, or I'll have you removed for trespassing. His hand drifts unconsciously toward his weapon, an escalation tell. Across the lobby, A young analyst named Jordan Kim looks up from a file, recognition dawning. A memo circulated last week. Director Holt would conduct surprise inspections this month. Jordan takes a half step forward, then hesitates, weighing moral obligation against self preservation. Serena remains still. I'm not leaving, she says evenly. I have legitimate business here. Mercer steps around the desk, invading her space to force a reaction. That's it. I'm calling backup to remove you from the premises. His voice rises, curated chaos meant to frame her as the aggressor. You're making a mistake, Serena replies, not pleading, just warning. Mercer lifts his radio. We'll see, he crackles into the mic. 5 seconds to step aside, or you will regret wearing that badge. His eyes never leave her face. Back up to main entrance. Belligerent trespasser refusing to comply, he announces. For the record, he's scripting. He gestures toward a hard plastic chair against the wall. Sit. Serena assesses her options. A scene serves no purpose. Documentation serves many. She takes the seat, back straight, hands folded, heads turn, curiosity, discomfort, complicity. Her gaze drifts deliberately, cameras in the northeast corner, receptionist pretending to type, clock digits rolling forward. Attempting to infiltrate a federal building, Mercer narrates loudly for passing staff, claims a non existent appointment. Pierce edges closer, lowers his voice. Maybe we should run her credentials again. Check the central database, Mercer snaps without looking. Back to your post. I've got this time stretches. For 23 minutes by the lobby clock, Mercer makes her wait. He processes 17 other visitors in that period, 15 white, 2 Asian, all with cursory screening. Serena watches, a living exhibit staged for the benefit of anyone who wants plausible deniability later. The seconds etch themselves into memory, neat as lines on a ledger. Stand up, Mercer finally orders, tugging on latex gloves with ceremonial slowness. Enhanced security screening. Serena rises, eyes neutral, as Mercer begins a showy circle. Remove your jacket. Shoes too. His voice carries just enough to invite an audience. People like you are known to conceal items. The phrase lands heavy, self-indicting. Serena complies, cataloging each violation, each idle witness, each camera angle, each timestamp flickering near the intake desk. Arms out, Mercer commands, palms sweeping along her sides longer than necessary. Standard procedure, he says, smirking. The humiliation is public, orchestrated, and thoroughly observed. A soft rustle breaks the choreography. Jordan approaches with a paper cup of water, summoning courage. Thought you might need this, they say, then lean closer, whispering, I know who you are. Serena accepts with a subtle shake of her head, eyes communicating what title cannot. Stand down. Mercer intercepts, knocking the cup from Serena's hand. Water splashes across polished floor. No interacting with subjects, he snaps at Jordan. Return to your station, or I'll report interference with security procedures. Serena's gaze keeps moving, collecting faces and nameplates, stamping them to memory with the precision of someone trained to build cases. Shoes back on, Mercer says at last, satisfied with the spectacle. His radio crackles. A supervisor's voice barks, Mercer! Report to Station 2 for package inspection. Annoyance flashes. He suppresses it with a frown. Don't move, he orders Serena and strides away. In his absence, Serena moves, not from panic, from preparation. She draws her phone from her jacket pocket with a motion so economical it barely registers. 3 letters go out to her executive assistant, XRY, nothing more. Protocol established her first week leading the bureau. Across town, Assistant Director Isla Rivera's phone buzzes, and a practice sequence quietly ignites. Mercer returns, suspicion sharpened. Inside, he directs, gesturing to a small, windowless security office. The room is bare. Metal desk, 2 chairs bolted to the floor, paint the color of old paperwork. The door clicks closed behind them. Phone, he demands, hand out. Security protocol. Serena passes it over, already having sent what mattered. Mercer locks it theatrically in a metal drawer. He leans against the desk, confidential tone dropping like a trap. People who don't fit the system disappear all the time. Paperwork gets lost, access revoked. No one looks. The smile doesn't reach his eyes. The threat does. When Mercer steps out to fetch forms, Serena turns subtly to the camera, Oppie, mounted high in the corner, and positions herself squarely in frame. All Officer Clint Mercer stated that people who don't fit disappear all the time, she says clearly, quoting him. He said, "No one would even look for someone like you, while confiscating my personal property and detaining me without cause." Her eyes fall to the landline. She lifts the receiver, dials from memory. Authentication code 8736 Delta, she says. Silent protocol, Philadelphia field office, security desk. No intervention. She replaces the handset as his footsteps return. The screen splits, figuratively, if not literally. Serena remains composed in the featureless room while, across the city, her executive team moves like a rehearsed ensemble. Assistant Director Rivera alerts Deputy Director Leon Graves, a 6'5" presence with a calm center. He pulls the security feed, and within minutes, 16 senior officials watch Mercer's every gesture in real time. Graves's finger hovers over intervention, then lifts. He recognizes Serena's method. She isn't just absorbing discrimination. She's capturing a live case study of structural failure, preserving it where selective memory can't edit. "Let it ride," he says, honoring her ground rules. Mercer re-enters with a satisfied smile, oblivious to the silent audience now studying his tells. He slaps a stack of papers onto the metal desk. "Detention documentation," he announces, bureaucratic triumph. "You didn't meet security clearance requirements." He taps a signature line. "Sign. Acknowledges denial for non-compliance with federal protocols." Serena skims once and locates the buried waiver meant to make future protests vanish. "I won't sign," she says. Mercer's jaw tightens, then relaxes into stage-managed concern. He grazes his coffee cup, tilted too near the edge. The cup wobbles, tips, and coffee spatters her cream blouse. "Clumsy me." He offers rough napkins with a feigned apology. Serena dabs at the stain without breaking eye contact. "Thank you," she says, syllables measured, composure undisturbed. The door opens. A man in a precise suit appears, ID identifying him as Operations Manager Nikhil Shah. "Is there an issue?" Shah asks, tone professional, eyes moving between Mercer and Serena. "Security matter," Mercer replies curt. "Not your department." Shah doesn't step back. "She's been detained a long time." Was her identity verified through the central system? Mercer squares up, territorial. "Maybe I should review your access, Shah. See if it's still appropriate." The threat lands. Shah's confidence dips. He retreats under the pressure. "Just following up on unusual activity," he mutters, backing out. "We'll talk later," Mercer calls after him, promise loaded. Headquarters hums. Analysts surface Mercer's personnel record. 17 similar incidents scattered across 12 years. Complaints closed with suspicious efficiency. Questions routed through SecureGuard International, the contractor providing building security. Back in the room, Mercer drops professionalism entirely. "Your kind always thinks the rules don't apply," he says, voice lowering. "Always looking for special treatment. My job is to make sure everyone gets exactly what they deserve." The words hang, poisonous. He leans too close. "You know what happens to troublemakers in custody?" Mercer whispers. "They have accidents." Serena places a hand against her chest. "I need medical attention." "My heart is racing," she says, crisp and controlled. "I'd like a witness present." Mercer studies her face for performance. "Convenient," he says, scribbling, claiming distress to obstruct procedures. "Noted possible psychological instability." He's building his paper wall, brick by brick. Serena watches, noting each flourish of his pen, the timestamp, the camera's red light steady in the corner. The quiet stretches again, inviting choices from anyone willing to intervene. The door opens. Officer Pierce steps in, uncertainty pulling at his posture. "Any Update on verification, he asks, deliberately avoiding Serena's eyes. Still processing, Mercer replies. Make yourself useful. Monitor the east entrance. Pierce shifts, spine searching for resolve. Maybe we should let her go with a warning, he says. It's been over an hour. Mercer's voice sharpens. Questioning my judgment? I can add insubordination to your file. The volume is performative, intended for the hallway. Pierce's shoulders lift, then fold. No, just checking in. Then check out, Mercer says, flicking him away without looking. Pierce retreats. Mercer drags Serena's purse to the center of the desk. Additional screening, he announces, and upends it. Items clatter across metal: a wallet, keys, a granola bar, a slim notebook. At the bottom, a plastic card with the FBI seal catches light. Mercer lifts it between two fingers. Well, well, he says. Fake federal identification. That's a felony. The card clearly reads FBI Athletic Facilities, but Mercer sees only what feeds his narrative. I impersonating a federal officer, he says, warming to the story. Jordan appears in the doorway with a folder. Sir, I have information regard. Did I call you? Mercer snaps. One more interruption and you can clear your desk, Mercer says. Jordan freezes. Behind them, Shaw returns with Assistant Security Director Morgan Chen. Officer Mercer, Chen says, calm but firm. Status? Mercer straightens. Potential breach. Subject attempted entry with falsified credentials and presented counterfeit FBI identification. Preparing charges, Chen frowns. Did you run her information through NCIC? I know my job, Mercer answers, an edge slipping out. Maybe you should worry about the contractor renewal next month. I hear my uncle's watching performance closely. The implied pressure is obvious. Chen's jaw tightens, but he steps back. Keep me updated. Serena notes the camera's indicator lights shift from steady to blinking. Executive override. Mercer turns to his terminal, fingers flying with bureaucratic speed. Preparing removal documentation, he says, satisfaction curling his mouth. You'll be blacklisted from federal facilities permanently. He dials the desk phone with theatrical slowness. This is Officer Clint Mercer at the Philadelphia Federal Building. I need local police for a trespasser impersonating a federal agent, he says. Approach with caution. Subject exhibits instability. The lobby stirs. Pierce reappears, determination briefly eclipsing fear. Mercer, I checked her credentials thoroughly, he says, holding a printout. There are inconsistencies with your report. The name matches an active. Give me that, Mercer snaps, ripping the paper, scanning two lines, then crumpling it into his pocket. Your access is suspended temporarily, Pierce. Surrender your badge until this is resolved. Pierce hesitates, hand covering his chest. Now, Mercer says, palm out, voice dropping to a threat. Or explain to your wife how you lost pension eligibility 6 months before retirement. The precision of the strike works. Pierce unpins his badge and sets it on the desk, defeat radiating. Mercer pockets it, then swivels back to the computer with renewed relish. Let's make it official, he narrates while typing. Subject exhibited aggressive behavior, refused standard measures, verbally threatened officer when asked for identification. Serena watches him build a false record, each keystroke another trap that will later spring on him instead. She decides to use his momentum. Why are you doing this? She asks, tone light with genuine curiosity. Mercer pauses, fingers suspended. Doing what? My job. She keeps her voice soft. Treating me differently from those you waved through. His hands hover again. I'm applying protocols to a suspicious individual, he says. What made me suspicious? She asks, patient as gravity. Experience, Mercer answers, typing resuming. 17 years here teaches you who belongs. He chose the number himself. It will haunt him later. And I don't belong because, Serena prompts evenly. The trap is baited so gently, he steps right in. People like you always want in where you shouldn't be, he says, pounding the keys, always demanding special treatment. Someone has to maintain standards. Someone has to keep institutions from being overrun. Each word locks into the camera's memory. The hallway stirs. The local police have arrived and wait in the lobby as protocol requires, radios quiet, eyes watchful. Mercer stands, smoothing his uniform. Wait here, he orders, motioning to a junior officer to watch the door. Don't let her leave. The junior nods, uncomfortable, trapped by hierarchy. Officer Mercer, a commanding voice calls from the doorway. You're about to meet the FBI's director. Deputy Director Leon Graves fills the frame, presence calm and immovable. Behind him, four agents in immaculate suits form a human partition between the security office and the gathering crowd. Mercer's irritation flashes, then melts into relief at the sight of federal credentials. Sir, thanks for coming so quickly, Mercer says, straightening to attention and reaching for control. I've detained a woman attempting to infiltrate your facility with falsified credentials. Mercer continues smoothly, gesturing toward Serena as though presenting contraband. Graves says nothing, allowing silence to widen. Mercer interprets it as space to elaborate. She's been belligerent, uncooperative, and presented counterfeit FBI identification. I've contacted local police to process her arrest for impersonation of a federal officer. He breathes like a man who believes the monologue seals the deal, already anticipating praise. Serena remains seated, hands folded, gaze steady, every detail of the room silently logged for future affidavits. Her patience, the most powerful statement present. Officer Mercer, Graves interrupts, voice soft and final, the kind that never needs to rise. Have you ever met FBI Director Serena Holt? Mercer's words collapse mid-breath. The room tilts, and for a heartbeat he seems weightless, trying to find a fiction that can hold this new fact. The director, he stammers. No, I. Graves steps aside, making space for the truth to fill the room. The junior officer blinks. Jordan Kim exhales a tiny sound. Chen's mouth flattens. Serena stands, smooth as a closing file, and the camera's blinking light records every inch of Mercer's dawning comprehension, a slow, irrevocable burn. The lobby outside has stilled into a hushed theater. Word travels with the speed of electricity. The woman seated like a cautionary tale is the director. Local officers glance at each other, recalibrating. Mercer's certainty fractures, but he clings to the frame he built. Anyone can claim a title, he says, grasping at indignation. This could be part of a test. It is, Serena replies, tone even. And you're failing it in real time. She doesn't reach for the drawer where her phone sits. She doesn't need to. Her team has already done what teams do when they're trusted to move without permission. Graves steps closer to the desk, eyes on the documents. You spilled coffee on the director, he notes without heat as though observing weather. Mercer opens, then closes his mouth. Clumsy me, he says again, smaller now. Graves flips a page. Waiver language, hidden beneath a denial of entry statement, he observes, designed to erase objections. He doesn't ask, he names it. Serena's gaze lands on Pierce's badge in Mercer's pocket. Return Officer Pierce's identification, she says. Mercer hesitates, then sets it on the desk, suddenly uncertain where his authority begins and ends. The room itself feels like evidence. Assistant Director Rivera's voice carries from the doorway. We've been watching the feed, she says, hands folded behind her back. 16 senior officials, and counting. Her expression is steady but furious at a molecular level. We also pulled your personnel history, she adds to Mercer. 17 documented incidents over 12 years, complaints closed by secure guard intermediaries. Interesting pattern, Mercer tries to summon outrage. This is outrageous. Rivera doesn't blink. The outrage is systemic, she says evenly. You performed for the camera, and now the camera returns the favor. Graves nods once. The junior officer steps subtly away from Mercer's shoulder. Local police remain outside the threshold, respectful now and careful. Chen clears his throat. Officer Mercer, he says, I'm relieving you of your duties pending investigation. He extends a hand. Badge. Mercer's jaw flexes. This is a mistake, he says. But the sentence has no engine. He unclips the badge and puts it in Chen's palm. Serena looks to Jordan. Thank you for the water, she says. Jordan's eyes shine but hold steady. It seemed right, they answer. Serena nods, moving nothing extra. Right is often inconvenient, she replies. The camera blinks, an unblinking witness with perfect recall. Graves glances at Serena's blouse. We'll have you set up in a conference room, he says. Fresh shirt in your size will meet you there. Serena's lips tilt almost imperceptibly. After we finish here, she says, gaze returning to the desk, we haven't yet documented the verbal threats. Mercer's shoulders jump. What threats? He demands. Serena faces the camera fully. Officer Mercer stated, people who don't fit disappear all the time. He added, no one would even look for someone like you. He threatened accidents in custody. Each phrase is precise, identical to his words, handed back with clinical restraint. The junior officer swallows. Pierce reappears in the doorway, badge back in place, color returning to his face by degrees. Sir, he says to Graves, I failed to intervene earlier. Graves's gaze is even. You have an opportunity to correct that now, he answers. Begin drafting your statement while the details are cold and accurate. Pierce nods and disappears into the hall. Spine straighter. Serena turns to Chen. How many cameras cover this lobby? 4 primary, 2 auxiliary, Chen answers. Audio on the office unit. Serena nods. Good. Pull synchronized footage from 847. Preserve copies off-site. Rivera's phone buzzes. Already done, she says. Jordan edges closer. Director Holt, they begin. I read the memo about surprise inspections. I recognized you, but I... Serena raises a hand gently. You moved when it mattered, she says. That's what counts. Jordan exhales. Mercer is pale, but still reaching for ladders that no longer touch the wall. A misunderstanding snowballed, he says. She refused to cooperate. Serena tilts her head. I complied with every unlawful order, she says, still speaking to the camera as much as the room. Your differential treatment was conspicuous. 17 people processed while I was made to sit in public, performatively humiliated for deterrent effect. Shaw reappears, resolve restored. Director, we've secured a room upstairs, he says, meeting Serena's eyes without flinching. And I apologize for not pressing harder earlier. Serena regards him. Apology accepted, she says. Accountability is a verb. He nods, absorbing it. Graves turns to the local officers. Thank you for your patience, he says. We'll handle the internal matter. No arrest is required. The officers nod, hands resting lightly on their belts, relief palpable. Mercer opens his mouth again, then closes it at Rivera's glance. The shift in power is absolute, not loud, just final, like a door softly latching. We also need to discuss your threats to Officer Pierce's pension, Rivera says. Mercer blinks. I was enforcing discipline. You were coercing silence, Rivera replies, under color of authority. She gestures to the desk. Produce the crumpled printout you seized. For a beat, Mercer pretends not to understand. Then, without any good options left, he retrieves the paper from his pocket. Rivera smooths it. Central verification affirming Serena Holt, director, active. She looks at the camera. He suppressed exculpatory information. Chen's jaw tightens. Contractor oversight will answer for this, he says, meaning secure guard, and the hallway seems to lean in. Serena lifts her chin. I'm prepared to make a brief statement for the record, she says. Graves nods. The junior officer switches on the room's audio officially. Serena faces the lens. This morning, at approximately 8:47, I entered the Philadelphia field office in business attire, consistent with internal policy. Officer Clint Mercer initiated a differential screening not applied to other entrants. I complied. I was detained without cause, threatened, and subjected to public humiliation. I requested medical assistance. It was denied. I now request immediate preservation of all footage, logs, and radio traffic relevant to this incident. The red light blinks. Rivera steps forward. We'll be conducting interviews, she says. Starting now. Chen nods to a waiting agent who carries a portable kit. Officer Mercer, please take a seat, Chen says. We're going to begin with you. Mercer bristles, then sits, the chair's metal legs scraping louder than anything said. For the record, he begins, I treated the subject as I would any suspicious. Stop, Graves says, tone still mild. Use her title. Mercer swallows. I treated Director Holt as I would any suspicious individual. The new words taste like sand. The camera records the recalibration, the reluctant correction etched into history. Serena turns to Pierce in the doorway. Will you assist Jordan in documenting the lobby sequence? Pierce nods. Yes, Director, he says, voice steady now. We'll diagram the entry flow, annotate timestamps, and flag comparators. Jordan's pen is already moving. Serena's attention returns to Mercer. We'll also need your radio logs, she says. He shrugs. Standard retention cycle. Graves's eyebrow lifts. Which we've already paused, he says. Mercer looks away. Serena gathers her jacket from the back of the chair. The coffee stain has dried into a map she will not forget. She leaves it there, a small, quiet exhibit of what happened. An agent arrives with a sealed envelope. Director, fresh blouse, they say, and a discreet garment bag. Serena nods. I'll change after these preliminaries, she answers. Jordan glances up. Director, should we include the phrase people like you verbatim? Serena meets their gaze. Yes, she says. Precision matters. Jordan writes, each letter a tiny act of refusal. In the hall, whispers swell and recede as news spreads. Not about spectacle, but about consequence. The building feels different already, as if walls are adjusting to a truer weight. Mercer stares at the desk, finally understanding he authored his own ending. Graves steps aside to take a call, returns with a clipped update. Headquarters has looped in OPR and civil rights, he says. They're standing by for handoff. Serena nods once. We'll keep this local until our immediate steps are complete, she says. Rivera glances at Chen. Secure Guards, Regional Director? Chen exhales. Already requesting a meeting, he says. I'd suggested counsel be present. Serena's eyes settle on the camera again. We will not make this a spectacle, she says, low but clear. We will make it a record. Let the facts hold the floor. The room, stripped of bluster, becomes honest. Shaw returns bearing a slim folder. Director, these are the visitor logs for the morning, he says. I highlighted the 17 entries processed while you were detained. Serena thanks him and flips through, nodding at what she already knows. A pattern of discretion applied along predictable lines. She closes the file gently. Mr. Shaw, your earlier hesitation was understandable, she says. But it will matter that you chose to step forward now. Shaw meets her gaze. It won't happen again, he says. She nods. Good. Behind them, the camera keeps blinking, indifferent to promises, meticulous about outcomes. Pierce re-enters with a simple diagram, arrows, initials, time codes in tidy handwriting. We'll digitize and attach this to the packet, he says. Jordan carries a stack of blank forms, already arranging interview slots for witnesses who pretended not to see. Serena thanks them both, then looks to Mercer. You spoke earlier about people disappearing, she says. Explain what you meant. He tries on indignation, finds it too large. It's an expression, he mutters, not policy. It sounded like a promise, Serena replies. Promises create liability. Mercer's eyes flick to the drawer holding her phone, then to the door, then back down. Chen stands. Officer Mercer, per policy, you'll remain in this room until escorted out, he says. Your personal belongings will be inventoried. Mercer scoffs. I'm not a threat. Chen's voice doesn't change. That assessment is no longer yours to make. He gestures to a second chair for Serena. Director, would you prefer to continue here or upstairs? Serena glances at the desk, the stain, the camera. Here, she says, for a little longer. Graves nods. We'll bring the necessary forms and a recorder. The lobby's buzz quiets as if the building itself is waiting to exhale. Outside, it's a summer storm gathers over Philadelphia, light dimming through high windows. Inside, the air feels clearer. Rivera takes a measured breath. Memorialize the timeline, she says. From first contact to deputy director's arrival. Jordan reads back. 0847 entry, 0910 seating, 0933 enhanced screening, 1002 transfer to office, 1022 coffee spill, 1041 local police arrival, 1049 deputy director arrival. Serena nods, satisfied. Shaw adds, security override at approximately 10:15. Jordan notes it. Mercer hears each time stamped like a hammer strike. Storytelling, he is learning, is simply ordering events and letting their orders speak. Serena took a breath. You ended your career when you confused discretion with authority, she said, and when you weaponized bias as policy. He opened his mouth, closes it. Graves spoke, tone clinical. Outcome will be evidence driven, he said. Your own words, your radio calls, your typed narrative, will follow them where they lead. The truth of that lands with more finality than any threat. It's not personal, it's procedural, and procedure, properly applied, is mercilessly fair. Jordan returned with a clipboard. Witness list so far, they said. Names and time codes stack in neat columns. Receptionist, 2 analysts, 3 visitors, the junior officer and Mr. Shaw. We'll schedule interviews in 30-minute intervals, Jordan added. Pierce nodded. I'll coordinate escort routes so statements aren't contaminated by hallway chatter. Serena's lips tilted again. Good thinking, she said. Mercer looked at the door and then at the camera, calculating escapes that no longer exist. Outside, thunder rolls. Inside, the room holds its quiet line, structure reasserting itself like a spine straightening after a long stoop. Rivera checked her watch. Director, may I recommend we transition upstairs? She asked. We've secured a room with controlled access. Serena shook her head slightly. In 5 minutes, she said. I want it on this footage that we concluded the initial interview here. Graves nodded. Chen folded his arms. Understood. The junior officer, silent until now, cleared his throat. Director Holt, he said, I should have said something sooner. Serena turned to him, softening. You'll say it now, she replied, in a statement. That's how we changed the next moment. He nodded, relief and resolve battling across his features. Mercer laced his fingers together to stop the shake. Director Holt, he said, reaching for civility, if I apologize. Serena lifted a hand. This isn't about my feeling, she said. It's about conduct under color of law. She gestured to the stack of forms. You built a narrative that would have followed me permanently had I not had the authority to stop it. Consider what happens to those without it. The words are not loud. They don't need to be. Mercer looked at his hands and finally sees the story he wrote in ink he can't scrub away. Graves picked up the detention document, read the buried waiver aloud, and placed it face up on the desk like a found weapon. We'll refer this to the U.S. Attorney's Office for review, he said, after internal findings. Rivera added, contractor oversight, too. Secure Guard's practices demand daylight, Chen nodded. We'll suspend Mercer pending outcome and review supervisory accountability along the chain. The junior officer inhaled, chest expanding for the first time in an hour. Jordan's pen does not stop. Documentation isn't punishment, it's protection of truth, of process, of the next person walking in the door. Serena glanced at the clock. Time, she notes. We'll transition upstairs. She turned to the camera one more time. For the record, I entered to observe operations as they truly function when leadership isn't expected. Today they functioned as designed by habit, not policy. Graves opened the door. The lobby's murmur swells and hushes again. Agents form a quiet corridor. Mercer remains seated, hands on his knees, the room suddenly too small. Jordan and Pierce gather materials. Shaw holds the door. Serena steps into the hall, the stain on her blouse, a small, stubborn banner that refuses to be ignored. The procession is calm, unhurried. No spectacle, no raised voices, just confidence moving through space. Employees step aside, curiosity tempered by the clarity of consequence. In the conference room upstairs, a fresh blouse waits as promised, folded with almost ceremonial care. Serena changes quickly, the small domestic act feeling like a reset that doesn't erase. Graves takes a seat at the head of the table. Let's begin formal statements, he says. Rivera sets a recorder down. Chen reviews a checklist. Jordan distributes forms, and Pierce aligns time codes with entries. The building exhales, then inhales again, steadier this time. Downstairs, Mercer remains in the security office, watched now by another officer who understands which way the wind has shifted. He stares at the coffee ring he made, a brown halo around nothing. He can hear faintly the murmur of a building returning to work, phones, footsteps, a printer somewhere spooling pages of accountability. The junior officer stands a little taller. The camera keeps blinking, impartial and tireless. Mercer thinks of all the times he wrote a version of someone else's morning that could have ruined their year. The thought is a weight he cannot put down. In the conference room, Serena concludes her initial narrative and signs the preservation orders. Rivera and Graves countersign. Chen confirms that digital clones are stored offsite and encrypted. We'll brief the workforce this afternoon, Graves says. Transparency without spectacle. Serena nods. Make it about procedure, she says, not personalities. Jordan hands over the completed witness list. We'll begin with the receptionist, they say. Pierce taps a line on the timeline. We'll correlate her screen logins with entry times. The work is methodical, almost soothing. Professionalism, real professionalism, always sounds like this. Steps, checks, cross-checks, decisions. A final knock. An agent leans in. Director, media is asking questions about activity downtown. Serena doesn't sigh. No statements until initial interviews conclude, she says. Issue holding language. Routine internal matter. No public safety impact. Graves nods. I'll take it. Serena looks around the table. When we finish here, I'll speak with the security team downstairs, she says. All of them. Rivera's eyes meet hers. We'll make sure they listen. Outside, the storm breaks in earnest, rain sketching the windows with gray lines that look like underlining. Inside, pens keep moving, faithful to the moment. Downstairs again, the office door opens. Agents step aside, and Deputy Director Graves takes one measured pace into the room. Mercer straightens instinctively, relief flickering at familiar authority on a lapel. Sir, he starts, pulling together another practiced narrative. I took custody of a trespasser impersonating. Graves lifts a hand, and the room stills. Officer Mercer, he says, voice low enough to be kind and firm enough to be final. Have you ever met FBI Director Serena Holt? The words land like a gavel. The camera's red light answers for him, recording the last moment before the story changes forever. Director Holt, on behalf of the Philadelphia Field Office, I offer a formal apology for this reception, Assistant Security Director Morgan Chen says, voice level and unsparing toward his own shop. Color drains from Clint Mercer's face as the scaffolding of his story buckles. His mouth opens, closes, opens again. Serena rises, accepting Deputy Director Leon Graves' steadying hand with quiet dignity. Deputy Director, she says with a nod, I see you received my signal. Yes, Director, Graves answers. We've been on the feed for 47 minutes, he turns to Mercer. You've just taken part in an unannounced protocol inspection. I followed standard procedures, Mercer stammers, bravado evaporating like fog under a noon sun. She didn't identify herself properly. I had no way of knowing. Graves removes a slim tablet from his suit jacket and taps. Mercer's voice fills the room, inescapable. People who don't fit disappear all the time. No one would even look for someone like you. Mercer's eyes ricochet to the camera he forgot while playing king of a small hill. Its blinking light now feels like ridicule with a metronome. Serena steps forward, presence expanding without raising her voice. Institutional authority braided with personal resolve. Officer Mercer, she says, In the past 90 minutes, you've committed 17 violations of federal security protocol, 11 violations of civil rights statutes, 4 abuses of authority, and 3 acts of documented intimidation against fellow personnel. She enumerates each. Prosecutor calm. What you do not know, she continues, is that this field office has logged the Bureau's highest discrimination complaints over 18 months, complaints that routinely vanished from the system within days. Her gaze doesn't waver. Your behavior today was not just witnessed, it completed a 6-month inquiry into systemic bias inside federal security contracting. The room absorbs it like a verdict. Mercer's eyes tick to Noel Pierce in the doorway, whose face carries equal parts vindication and disbelief, then to Jordan Kim, whose small act of courage now reads like a bright line on a dark map. Beyond them stand Nikhil Shah and Chen, neutral masks, schooled by years in bureaucracies. I was just doing my job, Mercer whispers, hearing the hollowness. No, Serena answers, unflinching. You exploited authority to indulge prejudice, and you've done it for years. Graves gestures to 2 agents. Officer Mercer, surrender your credentials and access cards. You're on administrative leave pending full investigation. The badge's weight seems to multiply in Mercer's shaking hand. This isn't just about you, Serena says, calm as winter air. It's about everyone who enabled you. And I have a list. Over the next 72 hours, the field office becomes a hive of controlled urgency. Teams in crisp suits comb the security department with archaeologist focus. Audit tablets glow as access logs, archived footage, and complaint records are reviewed line by line. Patterns emerge like footprints revealed by rain. Upstairs, a temporary command center hums, whiteboards blooming with timelines and names. Downstairs, officers shift in their chairs as interviews begin, the building's acoustics now tuned to the frequency of accountability. Alone in his apartment, tie loosened, shirt wrinkled from 18 sleepless hours, Mercer watches his phone vibrate across the coffee table. 7th call from Secure Guard executives in as many hours. He lets it buzz itself quiet. The text that follows is spare as ice. Do not speak to anyone. Counsel en route. Across town, in a glass-walled conference room, Secure Guard's crisis team assembles. Senior Vice President Robert Mercer, Clint's uncle, paces the perimeter, while attorneys unfurl binders across polished walnut. We'll terminate him immediately, the VP says. Issue a statement framing an isolated incident, not reflective of company policy. Lawyers nod, pens scratching. In the FBI's command room, Serena reviews slices of Mercer's 15-year employment. The pattern clarifies like an image snapping into focus. Hundreds of non-white visitors flagged for enhanced screening, while white counterparts pass with perfunctory checks. Timestamps speak for themselves. Average white visitor, wait 47 seconds. For minorities, 12 plus minutes. Director, an analyst calls, gesturing at a financial ledger. We found something. Serena scans quickly. Each discrimination complaint shows the same arc. Intake, preliminary notes, then nothing. Cases closed without resolution. Paperwork ghosts. Cross-reference dismissals with Secure Guard's payments to third-party consultants, she instructs. Fingers fly. Data points align with cold precision. 17 complaints evaporated after 17 payments to a consulting firm owned by the former security director's spouse. Mercer's phone buzzes again. This time he answers. His uncle's voice arrives sharp and rehearsed. Say nothing. Admit nothing. We're handling this. They have recordings, Mercer replies, voice scraped hollow. Everything I said. Everything silence stretches until it snaps. Then you're on your own, Robert says, and the line dies. Across the city, Pierce sits with an interviewer, his retirement photo visible on the credenza like a dare. Yes, he says steadily despite trembling hands. I observed this differential treatment for years. I reported in 2022 twice and again in 2023. The complaints disappeared, Pierce adds. After my second report, my schedule moved to night shift for 3 months. Jordan Kim lists names, dates, incidents that never found formal paperwork. We all knew, they admit, eyes lowered. He had protection from above. Speaking up got you reassigned, or worse, the evidentiary wall grows brick by brick. 17 current and former officers come forward. Security logs sketch a lattice of discriminatory practice. Internal emails among Secure Guard executives surface euphemisms that read like winks, tightened scrutiny on outlier profiles, elevated risk visuals, discretionary holds. The pattern is not subtle, it's a map drawn in neon. In Secure Guard's executive boardroom, CEO Dana Whitcomb receives preliminary findings with a practiced mask. A rogue employee, she tells the FBI visitors coolly, we maintain strict anti discrimination policies. Serena slides a thick folder across gleaming wood. 342 complaints across 62 federal sites in 5 years. Your personnel. Resolved without action. Inside emails, payments, internal memos on Secure Guard letterhead. This isn't one bad apple, Ms. Whitcomb, Serena says. It's systemic burial of complaints, witness intimidation, and retaliation. The mask slips, then reassembles. These claims are concerning. If substantiated, we'll conduct an internal. It's not an allegation, Serena cuts in. It's evidence. 48 hours later, the headline lands. FBI uncovers systemic bias in federal security contractor. Mercer's name appears in paragraph 3, his 15-year pattern summarized with clinical restraint. His phone stops ringing. Secure Guard's legal team stops answering. The union rep replies with a curt email. Given overwhelming evidence, representation is unavailable. On television, new accounts multiply. Officers from other facilities describe pressure to scrutinize certain profiles. Former employees recount being told to trust your instincts, meaning something uglier. Public reaction is swift. Protesters gather at Secure Guard's headquarters. Oversight committees schedule emergency hearings. 3 major agencies suspend contracts pending investigation. Mercer clicks off the TV. Silence presses like a weighted blanket. The doorbell rings, unexpected in his isolation. Through the peephole, 2 dark suits, posture unmistakably official. Federal agents stand with a warrant. As Mercer opens the door, he understands too late that his uncle has carved a side deal to save himself. In a federal administrative hearing room, morning light slants through high windows, dust motes drifting like slow storms. Mercer sits alone at the respondent's table. His union-appointed representative keeps a neat 6 inches of air between them, professional distance mirroring institutional disavowal. Across the aisle, 3 attorneys from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division arrange their files with unhurried efficiency. They don't glance his way, they don't need to. Their case lives in 12 binders stacked like a wall. A side door opens. Secure Guard's legal team enters, but takes seats in the gallery, not at Mercer's table. Message received. He stands alone. All rise, the bailiff calls as a 3-member panel files in, an administrative judge flanked by representatives from OPM and the EECC. In the matter of clearance revocation and termination for Officer Clint Mercer, the judge says, voice even as a plumb line. This panel will hear evidence regarding allegations of civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and falsification of federal records. Mercer's representative rises with the posture of someone arguing against gravity. My client offers mitigating context, he says, while not disputing the recordings. Officer Mercer acted under established, if unofficial, protocols consistent with training before responsibility gets diffused. The lead DOJ attorney says, standing smoothly, we'll show his actions were deliberate, patterned, and spanned 15 years. First witness, Noel Pierce. He avoids Mercer's eyes as he's sworn in, moving like a man finally ready to set down weight he's hauled too long. Officer Pierce, the attorney begins, in your 14 years alongside the respondent, did you observe differential treatment based on race or ethnicity? Pierce clears his throat. Yes, consistently. What happened when you reported it? First time I was told to learn how real security works. Second time I was moved to nights for 3 months after that. He looks down. I stopped reporting. Testimony accumulates through the morning. Jordan details intimidation tactics. Shaw describes complaints that vanished after being forwarded to secure guard. Visitors recount humiliations at Mercer's station. After lunch, the panel watches a compiled montage, years wide, rapid white processing, prolonged random holds for non-white visitors. When Mercer finally takes the stand, the arrogance is gone, replaced by a hunted caution. His eyes wander the room, searching for a friendly landing that does not exist. I was thorough, he insists, voice catching. Security requires judgment calls. Some profiles present higher statistical risk. What specific factors caused you to detain Director Holt? The attorney asks. Mercer pauses, seeing the trap and having nowhere else to step. She didn't look like she belonged, he says. The words hang like a dropped tool. Define what looks like belonging in a federal building, officer, the attorney says. Silence answers, followed by the recording of Mercer's threats. In closing, Mercer abandons his prepared remarks, desperation splintering whatever composure he has left. Everyone does it, he blurts. I'm just the one who got caught. There's an understanding about who gets extra scrutiny. It comes from the top. The panel deliberates 27 minutes. Unanimous decision. Termination effective immediately. Clearance permanently revoked. Pension forfeited. Referral to the U.S. Attorney for potential charges. Civil rights violations. Threats against a federal officer. Falsification of records. In the hallway, a process server waits with civil suit papers. Outside, Mercer discovers his car repossessed. The first domino in a collapsing line. The phone rings. Unknown caller. Uncle Robert? He asks, hopeful. Secure Guard Legal, a cool voice replies. We're notifying you that company provided health insurance terminated at midnight. Any public statement touching company policy violates your NDA. The line clicks dead. He trudges toward an empty parking space. A news crew pivots, cameras tracking his face like predators scenting blood. 6 months later, the Philadelphia field office's checkpoint gleams under better lighting. Intimidating corners and isolated rooms are gone. Transparent privacy screens and posted plain language procedures replace them. Metrics display on a digital dashboard. Jordan Kim, now compliance officer, trains a diverse cohort of new hires. Consistency is our touchstone, Jordan explains, gesturing to a flowchart on the wall. Every visitor follows identical steps regardless of appearance, accent, or attire. Trainees take notes. Questions are precise. Metrics are public, Jordan adds. Average weights, secondary screen percentages, complaint resolutions. Updated in real time, reviewed daily. Across the building, Noel Pierce leads an internal affairs briefing. Discomfort traded for earned authority. Our reporting path bypasses contractor management entirely, he tells security liaisons. Complaints route simultaneously to FBI oversight and an independent civil rights monitor. A split screen of the nation appears, renovated checkpoints, implicit bias curricula, posted rights at every door. At Secure Guard headquarters, the logo has changed, rebranded as Unified Security Solutions after a settlement that mandated new ownership and oversight. Federal monitors now occupy glass offices on the executive floor, reviewing policy shifts, hiring decisions, and complaint outcomes. On Capitol Hill, Serena testifies before House oversight, composed against a charged backdrop. Director Holt, the chair asks, was your visit a random inspection or targeted toward Officer Mercer? Neither, Serena replies. It was part of a coordinated response to patterns we identified in dismissed complaints. After the seventh report of someone threatened with disappearance at that checkpoint, we understood and documentation required direct observation. The hearing widens past one officer to the system that built him. Statistics slide across big screens. 70+% of minority visitors tagged for enhanced screening versus low teens for white visitors. Average detention times triple for non-white individuals. Dismissal rates showing unmistakable racial disparities. A bipartisan bill takes shape in real time. The Federal Facility Equal Access Act mandates independent oversight, body cameras at checkpoints, public complaint trackers, and annual certification in non discriminatory practice. News montages show security firms scrambling to implement reforms, executives discovering the urgent utility of bias training. The trend lines bend slowly in the right direction. Complaints across federal sites drop 63%. Processing time disparities fall 78%. Visitor satisfaction rises steadily across demographic groups. Meanwhile, Mercer applies for a low wage guard job at a suburban mall. The manager's expression changes mid interview as recognition dawns. Clint Mercer, you're the guy from the news, right? The one who threatened the FBI director? He leaves without a word, another rejection in a growing stack. Back downtown, Serena prepares her next undercover assessment, this time targeting federally subsidized housing discrimination. Quiet planning replaces spectacle. Accountability doesn't announce itself. It appears, collects facts, and lets the record carry the weight. A year later, Serena walks through the federal office revolving doors. Transformation is visible, redesigned space, transparent protocols, but most importantly, felt. The ambient tension has drained, replaced by a steady hum of professional focus. Officer Mendez, late 30s and unhurriedly thorough, processes her credentials with even rhythm, the same he uses for every visitor. Standard greeting, consistent eye contact, respectful cadence, without variation, without exception. Good morning, Director Holt, he says, returning her identification. You're expected in Conference 3. Where Mercer's desk once dominated, an information kiosk now stands, staffed by rotating officers who guide visitors instead of gatekeeping them. The dashboard glows. Average wait 1 minute, 42 seconds. Secondary screenings 7%. Active complaints 0. Resolved issues 3. Jordan meets Serena at the elevator, nervousness long since replaced by a quiet, earned confidence. Director, your quarterly compliance packet is ready, they say. In the conference room, Pearson Shaw wait with Chen, now serving as ethics liaison between contractor leadership and federal oversight. Conversation flows about implementation snags and unexpected wins. The biggest surprise, Shaw notes, is improved security effectiveness. Pierce nods. When officers stopped profile based screening and applied consistent steps, genuine anomalies surfaced more reliably. Last month, Pierce adds, a white executive in a tailored suit tripped 6 behavioral flags that would have slid through the old system. Turned out he was probing for industrial espionage targets. Chen smiles wryly. Standardization didn't lower vigilance, it clarified it. Across town, a dim warehouse houses a leaner, quieter Mercer on night watch, the only work his record can bear. He passes a break room where a small TV shows Serena discussing reforms. The Mercer incident, the anchor says, capitalizing the phrase like a proper noun, became a watershed in federal civil rights enforcement. Mercer's jaw hardens as he studies the shape of his legacy. Back at the field office, Serena ends her visit with a slow walk through the lobby. She watches a young black woman enter, receiving the identical professional treatment as the white executive behind her. No extra scrutiny, no theater, no humiliation masquerading as procedure. They move through without trauma, exactly as it should be. In another city, at another federal building, Serena approaches security without visible credentials. A young black officer greets her with the standardized welcome used for all. ID and purpose of visit, please. Serena presents her card. The officer processes it with efficient courtesy, unaware she's interacting with the director. Just another visitor, treated the same. Serena smiles as she passes through, filing away small signs of change. True authority, she reflects, never depended on making anyone vanish. Real power ensures everyone is finally seen. Outside, rain polishes the city into brighter reflections. Inside, the meter of procedure keeps honest time. A studio voice somewhere will inevitably package the story with clickable edges, but in this building, change speaks in posted procedures, match steps, and equal treatment. That music doesn't trend, it endures. And endurance, not noise, is how institutions remember who they're supposed to be. If you're here for accountability, the chorus will repeat, "Don't miss what happens next." Support the storytellers who expose abusers of power and lift up those who refuse to bow. Subscribe, share, and keep your notifications on if you want weekly reminders that consequences aren't mythical. Karma isn't a ghost. Sometimes she wears a badge, sometimes a clipboard, sometimes a body cam whose tiny blinking light refuses to lie. Beat stories, the refrain will say, because some rhythms are best served with justice, and some beats keep time so evenly the truth can't help but dance into view. All rise, the bailiff intones as a three-member panel enters, an administrative judge with representatives from OPM and the EEC on either side. Day two proceeds with the same restrained gravitas. On one table, DOJ civil rights attorneys align color-tabbed binders. On the other, Clint Mercer sits with a union appointee who keeps a precise 6 inches of distance. Secure Guard's lawyers occupy the gallery, not his counsel's chair, a conspicuous abandonment. The judge reviews scope, clearance revocation, termination, record falsification, and civil rights violations. Nobody raises their voice. They don't have to. The record has learned to speak for itself. The government opens by stitching together the morning's foundation, entry logs, queue times, and synchronized camera feeds that show Mercer's discretion skew with statistical ferocity. A veteran analyst walks the panel through heat maps of detentions, the red blotches clustering predictably across years. "This is not noise," she says, pointer steady. "It's intent expressed as practice." Defense tries to invoke unofficial norms, but the judge interjects, "Norms don't overwrite law. Names multiply. Complainants, witnesses, supervisors who looked away." Above it all, the montage of Mercer's own words hangs like a slow bell, tolling with every replayed threat. Pierce returns to the stand for cross, clarifying details. The reassignments after complaints, the quiet warnings to pick your battles, the way the radio traffic would conveniently go dark during questionable screenings. He admits his hesitations without excuse. "I failed to push harder," he says. "I won't make that mistake again." The panel listens without judgment, only questions. Jordan testifies next, careful and direct, describing intimidation deployed as theater. "He built narratives on the spot," they say, "and the computer made it look official." The phrase lands hard. The panelists write it down. Tools don't manufacture injustice. People do, and then systems preserve it. After a brief recess, the government introduces a forensic accountant. Payment ledgers align with complaint disappearances, 17 grievances, closing within days of 17 transfers to a consulting shop owned by a former security director's spouse. The accountant's voice never rises, but each chart feels like a gavel. Defense objects on relevance. Overruled. These entries are the context in which Mr. Mercer operated, DOJ argues. They illuminate motive, opportunity, and silence. The panel nods. Meanwhile, in a glass conference room miles away, executives practice saying isolated incident without blinking. The word isolated has never sounded more crowded. Mercer takes the stand again. The sternness is gone, replaced by a plea for latitude cloaked as professionalism. "Security requires judgment," he says. "Profiles can signal risk." The attorney asks for specific factors in Director Holt's case. Mercer falters, then says it. "She didn't look like she belonged." Silence turns oxygen dense. "Define belonging," the attorney replies. The panel lets the gap yawn open until Mercer's own recording fills it. People who don't fit disappear. When words return, they belong to the judge. This panel considers credibility lost. A note is made. The proceeding moves on. Not hurried, simply inevitable. Closing arguments compress weeks of investigation into minutes. DOJ calls Mercer an author of false records and unequal process, his discretion a cudgel, not a shield. Defense invokes training and culture. Then culture will answer too, DOJ replies. The panel recesses. 27 minutes later, they return. Termination effective immediately. Security clearance revoked permanently. Pension forfeited. Referral to the U.S. Attorney for potential charges. civil rights violations, threats against a federal official, falsification of records. Outside, a process server hands Mercer civil complaints. He doesn't read them. He already knows the shape of every page. The consequences cascade with mechanical efficiency. His car repossessed before lunch. His phone ringing with blocked numbers and then not at all. An email from Secure Guard Legal. Membership terminated. Benefits ended at midnight. NDA reminders, like tripwires in bold. A news van idles at the curb. Cameras tilt toward him, predatory and patient. He closes his blinds and sits in the dim, the outline of his badge, now surrendered, ghosting on his shirt where the metal once tugged. He tries to imagine a version of himself who declined to push, declined to threaten, declined to lie. That man never worked his post. 6 months pass. The Philadelphia checkpoint looks different and feels different. Harsh angles softened, private rooms replaced with transparent partitions, signage in multiple languages posted at eye level. A dashboard near the entrance refreshes in real time. Average weight, secondary screen percentages, open complaints, resolutions. Jordan, now compliance officer, addresses a diverse class of trainees. Consistency is our spine, they say. Everyone follows the same steps. Behavior and data drive exceptions, not vibes. Questions are practical: de escalation, disability accommodations, chain of custody for devices. Answers are procedural, accessible, memorized. Nobody reaches for instinct. Procedure, the good kind, has learned how to breathe. Across the hall, Pierce leads an internal affairs huddle. New reporting bypasses contractor hierarchies, he explains. Complaints transmit simultaneously to FBI oversight and an independent civil rights monitor. Retaliation triggers automatic review. A split screen of remote sites ticks by. Renovated checkpoints, posted rights, officers wearing body cameras whose blinking lights no one forgets anymore. Numbers matter. Stories matter. Together they resist erasure. Pierce closes with a reminder he wishes he'd heard years ago. Your authority lives in how you use it and how you document it. Heads nod. Pens move. Systems adapt first on paper, then in muscle memory. Unified security solutions. Secure guards rebrand after settlement forcing new ownership. Hosts federal monitors in glass offices on the executive floor. Every hiring decision, policy tweak, and complaint resolution gets a second set of eyes. In a hearing room on Capitol Hill, Director Serena Holt speaks in the same measured cadence she used in the security office. This wasn't a sting, she tells the committee chair. It was documentation in context. Screens behind her display hard numbers, disproportionate detentions, elongated wait times, vanishing complaint rates. The room isn't surprised. It is, however, ready to legislate. Patterns once denied are suddenly undeniable. The Federal Facility Equal Access Act moves with unusual speed. Provisions are concrete: independent oversight for contractors, body cameras and audio at checkpoints, a public searchable complaint tracker, annual certification in non-discriminatory practices, audit trails hardened against tampering, real penalties for retaliation. Industry lobbyists call it heavy-handed. Families who kept records in spiral notebooks call it overdue. Implementation footage rolls, officers learning scripts that sound like respect, supervisors coaching to behavior, not stereotype, entrances redesigned for clarity rather than intimidation. For once, the montage of change doesn't feel like PR. It looks like a blueprint finally being built. Complaint volumes across federal sites drop by more than half. Processing time disparities shrink dramatically. Visitor satisfaction curves inch upward, modest but steady. Effectiveness doesn't suffer, it improves. Consistency surfaces anomalies more cleanly than prejudice ever did. One case study circulates widely. A suited executive whose polished confidence once served as a pass slips alarms in a standardized screen. Turns out he's probing for industrial espionage targets. Protocols didn't dull judgment, Chen says during a training. They focused it. Serena reads the report and underlines a sentence. Process can be both fair and sharp. She circles it twice. Sharp enough to cut, fair enough to trust. Meanwhile, Clint Mercer works nights in a cavernous warehouse on the edge of town, the only job his record permits. He moves past a flickering TV in the break room as a commentator calls his fall a watershed. He doesn't stop, but he hears the capital letters anyway. The camera catches Serena discussing reforms. He studies his reflection in the darkened window. Thinner now, quieter. He had once imagined himself a necessary gate. Now he is a cautionary slide deck. He keeps walking. A ghost passing under exit signs, learning how to be small in places he once tried to own. Back at the field office, Serena takes an unhurried lap through the lobby. She watches a young black woman step forward and receive the exact treatment as the white executive behind her. No extra questions, no smirks, no theater disguised as procedure. Both are through in minutes, shoes on, dignity intact. Serena smiles without showing teeth. In another city later that week, she approaches a different federal checkpoint with her credentials tucked away. ID and purpose, the officer says. Calm, consistent, practiced. Serena presents her card. The rhythm doesn't change. Just another visitor, handled by a system that finally prefers policy to personality. True authority, she reminds herself as she clears the magnetometer, isn't about erasing people. It's about ensuring they're seen under the same light. Outside rain polishes glass and asphalt, and inside, the metronome of good procedure keeps patient time. Somewhere, media will package the arc with punchy edges. In this building, the win is quieter. Laminated placards, predictable scripts, output dashboards that anyone can read. It isn't cinematic. It doesn't trend. It lasts. Endurance is the point. Institutions remember what they repeat, and now this one repeats something closer to its charter over and over until it becomes reflex. Weeks later, Serena briefs a joint session of regional directors and contractor executives. We are not in the business of spectacle, she says. We're in the business of records. She outlines upcoming audits on housing access sites where complaints echo the patterns her team faced at the door. We'll test for consistency, reasonableness, and redress, she says. If your procedures are good, you'll pass. If your outcomes aren't, you won't. No one argues aloud. They rarely do anymore. The metrics will tell the story, and stories backed by metrics tend to outlive press releases. Quietly, several executives start rewriting handbooks. At Unified's headquarters, federal monitors flag a policy draft that would have resurrected subjective instinct overrides. The language dies in committee. In its place, a tighter rubric appears: behaviors, thresholds, supervision, audit. An HR lead mutters about bureaucracy, then reviews footage from 2 years prior and closes her mouth. Progress isn't linear, it's stair-stepped. People slip, documentation catches, training corrects, the public complaint portal receives fewer entries, and the ones that do arrive now track visibly to outcomes instead of avoid. The blinking red lights on cameras, once theater, have become ordinary. That's the point. Ordinary guardrails are the strongest kind. One morning, Jordan stands before a new cohort and talks about courage without using the word. Take the step you can take, they say. Offer the cup of water. Report what you saw. Follow the checklist when it's easiest not to. They described their hesitation that day, and how Serena's glance, stand down, also meant stand ready. The trainees ask about retaliation. Pierce answers from the back. We built paths that don't depend on the people you're reporting. Heads turn, pens lift. Courage feels less like a cliff and more like a staircase. The building hums around them, indifferent and, increasingly, dependable. Serena visits the reconfigured security floor with Chen and Shaw, pausing at the information kiosk that now stands where Mercer once presided. A rotating team answers visitor questions with practiced clarity. The small frictions are gone, Shaw notes. Now the real work shows sooner. Serena asks about staffing. More diverse, Chen says, and better retained. Standards are clearer, evaluations match them. At the dashboard, averages hold steady. Outliers trigger review. A mother with a stroller passes through smoothly. A contractor with mismatched credentials gets a respectful secondary screen that ends with a handshake and a corrected entry in the database. The system holds. On a different coast, an oversight committee tours a federal complex and sees the same signage, the same transparent partitions, the same posted rights. The chair remarks that uniformity, once derided as rigidity, has become a promise. The experience shouldn't depend on the ZIP code, she says. A guard demonstrates body cam playback tied to entry events. Chain of custody logs scroll on a screen. A reporter asks about cost. Cheaper than lawsuits, the chair replies dryly, then softens. Cheaper than people's trust. Outside, a cluster of former complainants nod to one another, less elated than steadied. Reliability, it turns out, is its own relief. Communications teams lean into transparency. Public dashboards show trend lines, not just snapshots. The agency blog walks through an anonymized case where standardized screening caught a genuine threat. Behavior signals plus consistent steps, not optics. An internal newsletter profiles 3 officers who de escalated a tense moment by quoting policy rather than raising volume. None of it goes viral. That's fine. The goal is not a dopamine loop, it is a competence loop. Serena circles competence on a whiteboard, then writes repeatable beside it. She underlines both. This, she tells her staff, is what legitimacy looks like on a Tuesday at 10:15 a.m. The legislation's first annual audit arrives. Independent reviewers sample footage, compare logs, interview visitors, and walk physical routes. Findings: strong compliance, measurable equity gains, targeted improvements for accessibility signage and translation offerings. A recommendation becomes a requirement. Budgets adjust. Serena signs the response with a note. Thank you for finding seams before they tear. In a side column, she writes a line to herself. Hold the window open. Bureaucracies close windows by habit. It takes constant hands to keep them from sliding shut. She copies the line to a card in her pocket. Habit meets counter habit. That's policy's heartbeat. In a small apartment with drawn blinds, Mercer tries on new names in job portals and imagines who he might be in places that don't Google him. It never works. The interviews he does land last minutes until a face tightens with recognition. Weren't you? He shakes his head before they finish. Living small is a skill he never practiced. Now it's a daily drill. Quiet lobby chairs, night shifts, a voice that won't carry. On a wall-mounted TV, Serena appears before another committee, talking about fair process as a force multiplier for actual security. He mutes the sound and keeps watching anyway. Back in Philadelphia, Serena pauses at the lobby threshold and simply listens. Footsteps, soft conversations, the quiet chirp of scanners doing their job. She remembers the coffee stains she left as an exhibit, and the first 3 letters she sent XRY, when she needed her team to move without visible orders. Rituals matter. She sends a different message now, TYK. Thank you, known. It pings a small circle. Graves, Rivera, Chen, Jordan, Pierce, Shaw. No fanfare, just a closed loop of people who chose procedure is over pretense. The reply bubbles arrive. Always, always, always. The work continues because people do. A year to the day after the incident, Serena returns for quarterly review. Officer Mendez greets her with that same measured cadence as last time, the kind that doesn't adjust itself based on who's listening. Welcome back, Director Holt. Conference 3, he says, while applying identical steps he used for the person ahead and the person behind. The information kiosk hums politely. The dashboard reads, average weight 141, secondary 6.9%, complaint 0, resolved 4. The numbers aren't perfect, they aren't meant to be, they're honest. She signs the visitor log anyway, because she signs what everyone signs. In a glass conference room, Pierce, Chen, and Shaw brief the quarter. A few minor anomalies, each caught by the same net. Clear thresholds, quick escalation, documented resolutions. Effectiveness up, Pierce says. Fewer misses, fewer false positives. Shaw adds, staff fatigue is lower. Predictability helps Chen reports on national trainings. Standardized scripts embraced more readily than expected, particularly by officers who dislike guesswork. Serena nods. Clarity is dignity, she says, for officers and visitors. Outside, the lobby plays its new rhythm. Inside, leadership reviews not just outcomes, but frictions, the tiny rubs where good systems can still get smoother. Across town, Mercer patrols the warehouse's echoing aisles, thinner in the shoulders, older in the eyes. A small TV in the break room replays an interview, an anchor calling what happened the Mercer case, the capitalization hard to miss. He grimaces at his reflected silhouette in the screen's gloss, then turns away. He once believed he was a necessary line drawn against chaos. Now he recognizes the line he drew was a circle around his own fear. He adds another check to a clipboard and moves on. The silence doesn't absolve, it only accompanies. Back at the office, Serena finishes her walkthrough by observing interactions she once would have had to correct. She doesn't have to now. A young mother receives assistance with a stroller. A contractor's mismatched name gets resolved without heat. A visitor who doesn't speak English navigates signage because someone finally invested in translation rather than excuses. Better, Serena says softly. Not perfect. Better. Jordan joins her at the exit. Quarterly reports polished, they say. Ready when you are. Serena nods. Bring only the pages that show work left to do. They exchange a small smile. Improvement thrives on honest appetite, not applause. Upstairs, the team outlines next targets: housing access points, veterans clinics, passport centers. Patterns travel, so will audits. Rivera dials in, grave and warm. Graves sends notes from a site visit in the Midwest, where an officer quoted policy to diffuse a colleague's temper. We're exporting culture, he writes, the good kind. Chen flags an accessibility gap that signage missed. Shaw proposes a fix by week's end. Pierce sets two timelines on the board, now and next quarter, refusing to let momentum congeal into complacency. Serena draws a small box around the word listen. Everyone nods. That is the quiet discipline behind everything else. Meanwhile, on the Hill, a subcommittee holds a follow-up session. The room is less charged than last year, more technical. Charts show slopes instead of spikes. A staffer asks if cameras at checkpoints have reduced discretion too much. Serena answers, they've reduced unaccountable discretion. The accountable kind remains, and it's better documented. A Republican from a rural district nods. A Democrat from a coastal city uses the phrase common ground without irony. The hearing ends with something rare, a sense that the work is tedious and that this tedium is, itself, an achievement worth protecting. By late afternoon, rain tapers to a gleam on the pavement. Serena stands beneath the awning and watches people move in and out without drama. She thinks of the first day, coffee blooming across her blouse, the chair, the radio, the camera that didn't blink. The stain became an exhibit, the clip became a training tool. She files away the way this lobby sounds now, quieter, steadier, a little kinder. She sends one more message to the team: good work today. Leave the lights on. It's half literal, half metaphor. Either way, the building keeps shining. That night, Mercer folds a rejection letter exactly in half, then in half again, as if tidiness could undo meaning. He places it with the others in a drawer that sticks. He should throw them out. He doesn't. He takes the bus to work. When the driver nods, he nods back. He pushes open the warehouse door and feels the echo meet him. On a steel table, a battered radio plays a news segment about standardized screening increasing real interdictions. He turns the volume down but doesn't turn it off. Some things you can't unhear. Some things you shouldn't try. The next morning, Serena visits another city's federal building without advance notice. The officer at the podium, young, focused, delivers the same greeting she's heard all year. ID and purpose, please. The cadence is identical and reassuring. She clears security, notes posted procedures, glances at a dashboard that looks like Philadelphia's twin. At the exit, she pauses to watch a visitor ask a question at the kiosk and receive an answer that makes sense the first time. That, she writes in a small notebook, is what legitimacy feels like at the speed of a weekday. A week later, she steps through Philadelphia's doors again, not to test but to witness. The lobby breathes without hitch. A young black woman receives the same steps as the white executive behind her. No theater, no extra hands, no extra anything, just a practiced, humane process. Serena's smile is small and real. On a wall nearby, a poster reads, "Equal process, clear standards, dignity in every step. It's not artful. It doesn't need to be." She snaps a picture and keeps walking. The best stories, she thinks, and not with a bang, but with a standard that holds. Elsewhere, another checkpoint plays the same rhythm. A guard quotes policy instead of raising volume. A supervisor backs them up. A visitor who expected a fight instead gets a path. The camera's tiny red light blinks like a heartbeat, unremarkable now, on purpose. Serena passes through without announcing herself. The system doesn't require her presence to behave. That may be the real measure of change, when the right thing is the default, not the exception made for a title. She writes one line in her notebook. The point is not me, it is everyone who isn't me. As Serena leaves, a student group enters. Backpacks, jokes, nervous energy in a line. They move through without incident, learning nothing about humiliation and everything about predictability. Outside, sun rinses the building in clean light. Inside, the machine hums along, visible and accountable. Somewhere, a narrator will urge likes, shares, and subscriptions. Serena doesn't object. Stories recruit attention, systems deserve it. She smiles and tucks the notebook away. Tomorrow's audit list sits on her desk. The work is not finished, it is thankfully clear. She walks into the day that keeps asking for proof and giving it back. If justice done steadily is your beat, don't miss the next chapter. Support the storytellers who expose power abused and celebrate those who refuse to bend. Subscribe, comment, and share if you believe accountability belongs at every door. Turn on alerts for weekly drops where consequences aren't hypothetical. And sometimes the badge that once failed becomes the camera that cannot. Backbeat stories, because some rhythms are best served with fairness. And the truest percussion is a process that keeps time, week after week, until the habit of equality drowns out the old noise.